Good evening. We will call this Mandan Park District Board meeting to order. Today is Monday, January 9th, 2023 at 5:30. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay. Public communication from visitors. I do see we have a couple people in the audience, but I think you're speaking later. But if you want to talk about anything else on the agenda, you sure can at this time. No, not quite yet. You're going to be pretty close, though. You're going to be pretty close, though. All right, we'll close that public communication portion of our meeting. Moving on to minutes, approval of December 12th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. If we could get a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the December 12th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Freilich.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Scott. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. All right. Item number one. Item number one is consider for approval Mandan Rodeo Committee recommendation for alcohol sales for 4th of July rodeo. Heather, thank you.
President Meschke and Commissioners, as you know, last month it was directed to kind of table this and put it back on the Mandan Rodeo Days Committee, and that's why Heather Bauer,
It's Jacobson.
Heather Jacobson Bauer, sorry, is here to kind of talk about the next steps. I know it was required to send out additional information to local businesses that had a alcohol and liquor permit. And so with that, Heather?
Hi, thank you. Yes, it's Heather Jacobson Bauer. I am the chairman of the Mandan Rodeo Days, and I just wanted to be present to see if you guys had any further questions or concerns about which businesses received the request for proposal that had alcohol licenses here in Mandan. After your guys' last meeting, I did reach out to further Class A, Class E alcohol license holders. The process that I went through is I went through those that I did not send an email to or contact prior to your guys' last meeting. I visited with all of those that I listed, visited with them on the phone, obtained their emails, talked to them about what our hopes were for the alcohol sales at our July rodeo. There was only one that refused a email and proposal. There was one that did respond via email saying that at this time they knew they did not have the staffing and they were kind of up and coming and wanted to wait for the opportunity in 24. There was a list that I did contact, leaving messages with, a couple of voicemails, and then I even left my phone number to return, and I did not receive any of them. So I think in some of the conversations that I had with the ones that I did visit with, they seemed interested. When they kind of learned that it was July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, some of the thoughts was, oh, that's a busy time. Staffing seemed to be an issue too with some of them as they talked, but that's kind of the process I went through. And the only ones that did respond was the Fanatics Events team with a request a proposal. So.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I know the board was concerned, we didn't really need to know the process. We just wanted to make sure Mandan businesses were, made aware of it.
Given the opportunity.
You weren't here last time to answer those questions, but,
yeah.
I think it's easier for us to answer questions then is how come I didn't get asked, and now that information is out there and I know, I think it was Commissioner Scott that brought up, well, that's obviously a busy time and maybe that's not the number one priority for some of these people with alcohol licenses. It might be downtown on Main Street, or it might be other places, and to be able to do it there would be difficult. So we did a little more, talking here too, but we want Mandan Rodeo Days to be Mandan as much as you do, but we'll if they're unable to do it, we'll take somebody else too, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a big event, at this time with the new seating. We'll have the capacity of 4,000 seats a night if we're fortunate enough to sell out all 3 nights. And we have 3 different areas that we plan to sell the alcohol at. So that's our hope and our dream. So, yeah, I think it'll be a big event.
Well, thank you for doing the extra work. I know we appreciate getting, even though we got the same result, it seems like we're.
We
thank you
gave the
for
opportunity to
doing
many
it
more,
again.
and
So,
yeah.
Any questions for Heather? Any further comments?
I do have one question, yeah. Again, thanks for putting in that extra work. We appreciate that. If we do a motion to approve them, should it be contingent on them receiving that Class B, was it, license?
Correct.
I would hate to have to lock into them and if they're unable to receive that license.
Yes, President Meshke and Commissioner Melhoff, I did reach out to Jim Neubauer, City Administrator, and talked about that. If there were any concerns, doesn't seem like there'd be any concerns on their part. They are drafting language that was approved, so I don't foresee any issues associated with that, but I think that's a good recommendation to add that as part of the motion. The other comment I would have would be, I know it's just for 1 year,
Correct.
but if it's successful, do we want to just allow the Mandan Rodeo Days to have the first right of refusal to renew the contract for 2 additional years without having to come back before the park board? Or would you like them to come back every single year with this opportunity?
I think you said first right of refusal, maybe, is that what you?
I would recommend if, Mandan Rodeo Days is happy with Fanatics and after 1 year they'd like to renew for 2 additional years, I would be comfortable with that. That way then there's a 3-year commitment. Fanatics has an opportunity. The Mandan Rodeo Days would have to make that decision. So it's a 1 year for 2023, 4th of July events with Fanatics. But if it's successful and the Mandan Rodeo Days gives a recommendation that you want to proceed with additional 2 more years, then it would just be essentially a first right of refusal for the 24 and 25. Again, both parties would have to agree.
Correct.
Heather, I'm not being maybe too nosy, but how long of a contract do you have with John?
So 3 years. So currently 1 year through, and we have 2 more additional years for them assisting us with our marketing and sponsorship. Now, in conversation that I had with the other businesses with the alcohol licenses, I did tell them that it was a 1 year time, that we would be relooking in 24. So, but yes, we would need to agree, the Mandan Rodeo Days, we would need to agree as a committee that Fanatics did an excellent job this year. Do we want them again in 24? So yes, that would be reevaluated at that time for the alcohol sales.
I guess if you did get some interest from Mandan businesses, or hey, we know this could be a possibility next year, maybe a 1 year to go with to begin with, and then after that, if there are no more interested Mandan businesses, then I'd be more comfortable doing it after 1 year. But and then you can talk to your group too.
Okay, makes sense.
I know John's back there hiding. I got a question for him. I got a question for him since he's here. So is there any possibility of you moving over here to Mandan?
Yeah, Commissioner Mutter, right? Lane, I know you by Lane. But Commissioners, first off, I'm John Bollinger. I'm the owner of Fanatics Events and really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to stress our company, while we might have an office in Bismarck, obviously Bismarck Larks was the kind of first organization, we really see ourselves as a North Dakota event company. We want to bring events not only to Bismarck, but to Mandan and other surrounding communities. And this is just the start. We've invested in 2 full-time employees that only work on our event company now. And so to answer your question, Commissioner Mutter, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. And I see this as we want to grow Mandan. I mean, this event, I believe, sales tax stays in Mandan. We're drawing tourists into Mandan. We're driving business downtown to Mandan. So while I think a good percentage of the alcohol sales, the gross profit, are going to the Park District and to the Executive Committee. A real part of this is to be a strategic partner. What this allows us to do, as we've talked about, is actually put all-inclusive ticket packages together. If we have to negotiate with another third party, there's just, more people involved in that. So there's a lot of strategic synergies here that I think are overall going to help the Mandan Rodeo Committee be successful, which if there's more net profit going to the charity, then they can invest back into more Mandan charities. There's just a lot of win-win here. So I just would really like to stress that while we might have an office over the river, we are very passionate about Mandan. I know recently I was elected to the Mandan Progress Organization. I'm very excited to serve on that board and to help stimulate events with Matt Shenandoah and the board there for downtown Mandan. So I live in this community and I'm just passionate about growing events and making them really successful and helping great nonprofits like the Mandan Executive Committee continue to grow. So to answer your question, yes, I think there's interest in that. There's interest in growing and doing more events in Mandan. And so I just appreciate this opportunity because the stigma of we're a Bismarck business, I do understand it, and it's something I've been having conversations about, but we're passionate about Mandan, and we want to continue to prove that. And if there's anyone would like to get to know us more, talk with us, and see our interest in that, I'd be more than willing to do so as well. But I do appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Well, and John, I don't think anybody has anything against you. We appreciate it, obviously. It's just that we're elected officials for Mandan people, and we want to make sure that we're, I know what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I just, and I think Heather did give the opportunity for people to do that in Mandan, so that's kind of what we asked last time. So I don't have any problem this year, I guess, awarding you with the contract. Whether we go more than 1 year or not is, I guess, what are the board thoughts on that? Or that first right of refusal after that?
I would make the motion to approve Funatex events for alcohol sales and services for the Mandan. Rodeo Day is July 2nd through the 4th on 2023 for 1 year, with 10% gross profit to the Mandan Park District pending on approval from the City Commission.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mutter.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Freilich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Scott?
Aye.
Commissioner Melhoff?
Yes.
Commissioner Freilich?
Yes.
Commissioner Mutter?
Yes.
Yes from me as well. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to item 2. Consider for approval the following improvements to Dakota Centennial Park site. I think we're just looking at item 2A here, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so we do have a deletion to the agenda, I guess. We can cross that 2B off. And we'll go with Andrew. Andrew is here requesting to construct a remote control car track.
Yeah, so President Meskey and Commissioners, our Dakota Centennial Park Advisory Board has met twice with this request to improve a remote control track. We currently have one at Nicola's Park in southeast Mandan that was put together 5+ years ago with some volunteers. The track itself sits within a residential development. This track request would be on the east side of Dakota Centennial Park where the former community gardens is located, so it's not necessarily in a residential area. Some of the discussions is nitro type remote control cars, which obviously has a sound and a noise associated with that, so we didn't feel that would be important to be placed in a residential area. The area itself obviously is a little ways away from both the Bismarck Mandan communities and some of the hobbies that is incorporated with that. But at this time, I will introduce Andrew. We have a PowerPoint here to show you that was in your packet with some slight changes. As President Meskey did mention, the Stock Car Association was going to attend for a go-kart track. Obviously, communication between the two individuals. I was not able to communicate with that, and so we are not going to discuss a go-kart track at this time. But I would make the recommendation that if it was to move forward, that we bring the Stock Car Association back to the Park Board for final approval. The way our agreement reads with the Stock Car Association is they have first right for all motor vehicle activities at Dakota Centennial Park. And so we understand right now today it's demolition derbies, it's the mud type races, and along with the Friday night stock car races. What we're trying to minimize is the impact to the noise to the community. Obviously our events at soccer, obviously our events at Prairie West Golf Course. So when there's events and activities taken on during the week, the noise has become an issue at times. We understand the Friday night events and some of the larger ones for Friday, Saturday races. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to introduce Andrew and kind of give an overview on his project.
Thank you, Andrew. Can you say your last name, please.
Liliord,
Liliord. All right. I'll try to remember that.
the rookies. All right. All right. So my name's Andrew Liliord. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you guys today about a public RC car track in Mandan, North Dakota. All right, so the request would be to build a remote-controlled car racetrack available to the public on public property. Are you going to maximize it? All right, so the request, build a remote control RC car track open to the public on public property to maintain the track with a nonprofit entity through race event fees and donations. The request would be to move the existing RC car track located at 1216 14th Street Southeast, Nicholas Park, to the previous Community Gardens location. So the proposed location would be on the east end of the existing Mandan Stock Car Association track. I'll just take you through some examples of RC car tracks in the area so you can see kind of what we're aiming for. This is an RC car track in Jamestown, North Dakota, established in 2017, known as Dakota RC. That is a picture of the driver's stand at Dakota RC and a list of the infrastructure that they built out in order to have race events there held at the RC car track. Infrastructure such as electrical hookups for charging batteries for the electrical RCs, on-site water truck for watering the track down, elevated driver stand, a press box, lights, sound system, a hard clay packed track, a pit lane, and some parking. The total area of the Dakota RC is roughly 1 acre in size. Dakota Slideways is in Aberdeen, South Dakota, another good track in the area. This one was established, I believe, 2 years ago. You can see their driver stand, their announcer box in the pictures. Their infrastructure is very similar to Jamestown's with the addition of an underground sprinkler system. They don't have above ground hoses, they have an underground sprinkler system so they can just hit a button and it'll water the track for them. Everything else is roughly identical. The total track plus parking lots, again, 1 acre in size. Waterford City is a track under construction, I guess you would say. They have an agreement with the Waterford City Park Board. They're going to be building it near the softball diamonds, I believe, the new softball diamonds in Watford City. That picture on the right is not of their track currently, but that's a picture of their driver stand and how they're going to want to build it out. It's going to be on top of a shipping container. So that's just an example of what their driver stand will look like once it's completed. And then again, a lot of the same infrastructure, electrical hookups, driver stand, timing system, pit lane, press box, sound system, as well as an underground sprinkler system. Again, really, the track plus parking lot's only 1 acre in size. So that's pretty common for the total footprint of what we're asking to build out. The current track is in Nicholas Park, located at 1216 14th Street in Mandan, surrounded by residential neighborhoods. This kind of limits the use of the noisier gas-powered RC cars, which I would say maybe 40% of people use, 30% of people. It's getting more electrical, RC driven from now in the future, but people still do enjoy driving their gas-powered ones, so that area isn't necessarily the best area to do that in. There's no current agreement or anybody maintaining that track. It was just built with volunteers, like he said, maybe 8 years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So the current track doesn't have anybody overseeing it. No one's maintaining it. There wasn't any entry fees for league nights or races being gathered. So basically there was no money going into the track whatsoever. It was just made by volunteers and maintained by volunteers. And when those volunteers get tired, it just kind of goes away. So those are the lessons learned with the current track and what we would have to rectify with the new build to keep it sustainable. All right, so the proposed management for the new RC car track would be to operate it under its own nonprofit entity. There would be a small committee of members of the RC Track Club to make decisions that need to be brought to the Parks and Rec Board when necessary. The track budget would be acquired from entry fees to the races, donations, as well as grants, if available. And the nonprofit entity would work with the Parks and Rec office through agreements as agreed upon. So this is a possible orientation of the track that we would be proposing. So what you see in the picture is overlaid over the existing community gardens. So that's an aerial image of the community gardens. So we wouldn't be proposing to, increase use over there. It would just be kind of in the same footprint as the community gardens. The yellow RC car track, as you can see in that picture, is roughly 40 yards by 60 yards. The blue, that little blue rectangle, is the driver box and / press box, 16 yards by 4 yards. The green is just places where you could place bleachers, another 16 yards by 4 yards. And the purple is just a parking lot area around the track. So getting into what would be needed to build out a track. So phase one would just be to relocate the track itself, get a bunch of clay that's suitable for building tracks, throw it down over the community garden, start shaping it, put a bunch of track barriers down, which is basically that black erosion tubing, or what do they call it? Drain tile, thank you. Black drain tile is the common barrier for RC car tracks, so they just stake it down along the edges of the track and constructing the track with volunteers and some volunteered equipment. Phase two would be to install infrastructure such as the driver's stand, timing system, electrical pedestals, sound system, pit lane, etc. This would allow for race events to be held, league nights, and to start gathering those race event fees that would sustain the track indefinitely. Phase three would be to make it a really nice RC car track. So throwing down some track watering underneath the track lights, spectator seating, just a couple security cameras just in case, and a gravel parking lot to basically make the facility a really nice facility where you could host regional events such as some semi-professional or professional races. So the track itself, the resources needed, that's just a mock-up that I made on the computer of a potential track. That isn't necessarily the design we would go with. It's just an example of a pretty common track. Basically, so I could calculate how much cubic yards in clay that we would need. So that specific track length is 340 yards, 40 yards by 60 yards in footprint. The base depth of the track is 1 foot deep on the straightaways, on the low spots. 550 cubic yards roughly is what you would need of clay to build that out with 1,800 feet of track barrier. So given just a rough estimate of the costs of building out a track such as this, so phase one, just relocating the track, getting some clay down and getting the barriers set up would be anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. It would be quite a bit cheaper if you get free clay, which I'm in the middle of working with Bauer Construction. They are I believe, the people constructing the high school over in Mandan. So they said that we could potentially get a bunch of free clay from them. So that cost could be lower if we get free clay, but 2 to 3 if we have to pay for clay. Phase two, putting up the driver stand, making the sprinkler system, sound system, timing system, stuff like that. That could be anywhere from $23,000 to $30,000. And then phase 3, making it a nice track, again, like I said earlier, 15 to 23 more $1,000. But all of these would be dependent on quotes that we would get. This is just rough estimates at this point. And these are just broke out sections of those phased builds, so exactly what those dollar amounts would be going towards. So phase 1, lane barriers, clay. Phase 2, finished driver stand, a potential ADA lift or a ramp to a driver stand, $7,000 to $11,000. Again, could be much more expensive depending on what you put in, could be less. Most likely not less though. Timing system, electrical pedestal, sound system, pit lane, those are just broken out there for you guys. And then phase 3, again, broke out costs of what would be needed to make it a nice, large event ready RC car track. All right, the build schedule, if approved, we would potentially want to be racing by potentially July of this year. So the RC track, like I said, would be race ready by July of 23 if we keep with this construction schedule. So construction would begin as soon as possible, once the snow melts, once the ground's dry, in April or May. Announcer box and driver stand would be built in April to May, dirt work April to May, fencing May to June, lights May to June, and so on, as you see there. Hopefully being all built out by the end of June and ready to go by July, but that would all depend on funding and donations and all that stuff. So, potential track schedules once approved and once built out. So it's not going to be every night all the time. For the most part, RC tracks in this area kind of run 2 or 3 race events a month. The one in Aberdeen has 1 league night plus 1 race weekend a month, so that's 2 races a month. Jamestown only has 1 race weekend a month. We would be pretty similar to that, so 2 or 3 race events per month is all that we're really looking to do. That's kind of the sweet spot in the area, it seems. So obviously hold more if people want to race more, but 2 or 3 is probably what you're going to expect. Noise levels for something such as this would be very low. I know there's been talk about soccer fields to the south of this location, pretty close by. They're roughly 200 to 300 yards away from the potential RC car track. They wouldn't even be able to tell if the electric cars are racing, even while they're playing soccer. The nitro, I would say the nitro RCs would be like a bunch of quieter weed whackers, gas-powered weed whackers is probably the closest thing I can think of. So it's not going to be super loud. Most of the time during a race, there's only 5 or 6 of them going at a time. So I really wouldn't think that even soccer events 200 to 300 yards away would be much of an issue for the nitro cars. But like I said, noise levels for the most part would be a non-factor from something like this. Looking at potential track benefits. So the track would increase business to the hobby shop in Mandan, having people bringing more awareness to the hobby, having more people getting into the hobby, obviously is going to help the hobby shop. Race events will bring racers from out of town, a lot potentially from out of state even. The races in Jamestown usually will have 20 to 30 people on a good race weekend. Aberdeen brings in about the same amount. Most are from out of town. A lot of people from Minot, a lot of people from Bismarck. Watford City is going to have quite a few people now that they have an RC car track. So you're looking at 20 to 30 people for every race event coming from out of town. So it just increases the amount of business to Mandan as a whole. Depending on the race weekend, sometimes you have 2-day races, so that would increase hotel business, restaurants, gas station business, stuff like that. Additional benefit, it's fun for kids and adults alike. It would be another fun activity to do in Mandan, and there's already interest in the hobby, especially having a hobby shop. Most towns in North Dakota don't have a hobby shop, so I would say Mandan has more hobbyists in the RC realm than most towns in North Dakota already. So that would just be more of a reason for more people to get into the hobby. Additional benefits, older people like to race as well. Aberdeen has a 40-plus age division, and I believe it's their most popular division. Usually 6 to 8 people are racing in every race in that division, so it's good for all ages, really. It's a fun hobby. Potential next steps would be to establish a nonprofit entity and sign an agreement with Mandan Parks and Rec, get Mandan Parks and Rec final approval of the project, contact the city of Mandan for building permits, etc., for any building that we're going to be doing, most likely the driver's stand. Notify newspapers, get the word out, establish a Facebook page, and start acquiring donations and start getting quotes for materials to build this track out. So that is all I have for you guys.
Andrew, I asked this question already once before, but I'd like to the board know. But I got two questions, actually. One is, can you give the age group that race them? Because you brought up 40 plus, but how is the youngest versus the oldest for you? And the second one is, you're going to have this committee and stuff. How many people do you expect in Bismarck Mandan to race during the week when you do a regular show?
Okay. So the ages vary greatly. The oldest people that I've seen racing are in their 70s. The youngest are 4-year-olds. Usually people that are like kids of people who grew up having RC cars. Those kids will get into it really early and will be actually pretty good when they're like 4 or 5, which is kind of demoralizing for me who got into it this year, getting beat by 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds for a lot of the races that I was doing. But I got better. But the little kids are good. They're really good. But yeah, it's a wide range of people that are racing. A lot of people in their like 30s. No, it's just you wouldn't even be able to say who's the most common because there's just from like 4-year-olds to 70-year-olds for the most part. Probably more people in middle age, like 40s, in their 40s, would be the most common. And then, yes, how many people would be looking to race on a regular basis? I would imagine just in Mandan and Bismarck, you probably would have enough people just for a league night without anybody coming from out of town. I would say 20 people on average to 30 people on average for a league night. But that's only the amount of people. The amount of classes that you race is more than that. So there's multiple classes with RC car racing. So just off the top of my head, the most common ones are 8th scale buggy, 8th scale truggy, short course, mini truggy, and then nitro buggy, nitro truggy. So that's, 6, 7 classes right there. Most people have 3 or 4 cars. I know I have 3. So each person is good for 3 or 4 entries. So 20 people could be 75 entries. So you really don't need that many people to race when people are racing more than one division, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so just to build off that, so what would a typical league night look like? So you'd have flights and 5, 6 cars at a time and whittle down to, I suppose that would be more like a weekend event. You'd just have so many flights, and so you'd start at 5 p.m., go till 8, or can you kind of walk us through what a typical league night would look like?
Right. So a league night, yeah, you're racing in the summer, so it's gonna get dark a little bit later. So yeah, a usual league night would start around that 5 p.m. time frame. You probably wouldn't practice very long like you would on a race weekend. Race weekends, they have practice usually on Friday nights, just open to the public, and then practice from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then you'll start racing at 10. You'll do 2 heats on a race weekend for every class. So that'll usually take you until about 2:30 or 3, and then you have one final taking you to about 4. So on a league night, you would start at 5. You probably would only have 1 heat per class on a league night. You wouldn't probably have enough time for 2 heats in each class. So you would do 1 heat in each class plus a final for a league night. You would be done in a few hours, especially if there's less than 20 people. If there's 20 people, it would get done in 3 or 4 hours. But you would probably have a heat plus a final. You wouldn't have 2 heats plus a final like you would on a race weekend.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, but what would an estimation be of user group size for maybe the Mandan and Bismarck area?
Just
Number of people that are involved that you can draw from for this?
currently, like I said earlier, we have a hobby shop in Mandan. So the amount of people already in Mandan and Bismarck that are in the RC hobby would be higher than, say, Jamestown or Watford City, or even Aberdeen for that instance. I don't think Aberdeen has a hobby shop either. So I would say just as is, without increasing awareness and getting people into the hobby, you probably have anywhere from like 60 to 80 people that would potentially race right now without even any awareness being drawn to a new RC track. So you have enough people just in Bismarck and Mandan alone to have a sustainable track without even having anybody driving from anywhere.
So Andrew, you don't have a group put together yet? You don't have like a nonprofit group put together yet? That would be get together and, hey, we're gonna call ourselves this and we're gonna, you're not there yet? Is this just you coming to ask, or is there a group coming to ask?
So there's a solid group of guys who are already into the race scene.
Okay.
A lot of guys that drove in Jamestown this last year that live in Bismarck or Mandan. So
Okay.
there's 5 of us currently who are really serious in getting this track built. We don't have a nonprofit entity yet. We were kind of looking at the potential for approval before going that route. But no, there's about 5 of us that are serious in building this track out. So we would just need to go get a nonprofit entity put together first, if approved, for the
I think
track.
it'd be easier for a board to work with a group than, say, an individual here, and I think it makes sense for us to do that. I don't oppose, I have a few other questions, I guess. So our current track right now, is that a clay base? Is that a clay surface that's used, that could be used for this new track and stripped, or
It used to be clay. It's a lot of sand
Okay.
now.
disappeared? Got it.
Yeah, it kind of just went into the ground, and there's a lot of sand on it. So you wouldn't get much from it
Okay,
currently, but there's a lot of clay around the town just in general piles already. So I don't think the amount of clay is going to be the limiting factor for this track build for the most part.
because we don't need 2 tracks in town, I don't think. And then I guess that's my next question is, obviously that's in a residential neighborhood.
Mhm.
How and what do we do with that? Are there, covenants must allow that type of, the racing? Do you know, Attorney Ruff, as far as what our covenants are there? And what can we do with that if we were able to just up and move? What would become of our old park and what would become of our old racetrack?
I don't think there's any restrictions against using it's park property, so I don't think there's any restrictions. It's a park activity. What would happen to Nicola's Park is another subject, whether the track is there or not. And that's been an ongoing discussion. Does the park district want to do anything with that park property as far as any improvements or trying to sell it? I know they're in the deed. When it was given, there's a right of reverter back to the Nicolas and their heirs. Would they want the property back if the park district simply decides we're not going to use it as a park anymore for any purpose? Then would they actually want it back, or would they get rid of that right of reverter so that it would become the parks to decide to sell? If they want to take it back and the park district decided, yeah, okay, we'll let you have it back, then it could go back on the tax rolls for the city of Mandan. I don't know whether, there's not been any contact with any of the Nicola heirs to see if they have any interest in taking it back, but that's sort of a discussion for another time.
Okay.
President Meshke, I have had conversations with the individual about the potential of a entry-level putt frisbee golf course there, and the existence of this track was kind of a barrier. I mean, I laid it out on the aerial, and I could get 8 holes, but with the track wasn't there, I think it would maybe lend itself to that, kind of a low-impact use as a potential anyway. I do have some questions for Cole. So, I mean, we moved the community gardens out of here, and that was largely based on our meetings with the rodeo, expanding rodeo, potential to expand soccer, stock car needs. I'm very much in favor of this as long as we're not hamstringing an existing user base. What are your thoughts there?
Yes, Commissioner Melhoff, you are exactly right. We reached out to soccer. They weren't able to attend the 2 Dakota Park Advisory Board meetings. Nathan Tolman called me back on Friday, I believe it was, and again, echoed the exact same comments, is they don't want to stop progress or opportunities for different sports and activities, but want to be cognizant of parking needs and their expansion needs. Their expansion needs on the youth side would be more in the southwest corner they're trying to expand. When that happens, I'm not sure. Funding, I'm sure, is an issue at this time. The other concern that we have would be we remove community gardens to free up additional parking and opportunities, and we can continue to grow. I think the event and the activities for the RC track is great. Unfortunately, we can't do it at Nicolas Park, which would be ideal because the site's already there and the noise is a concern. The question would be is do we proceed with that improvement at Nicolas and see how the noise becomes an issue, or do we move it to Dakota Park? His site plan that he has, the purple area that he showed for parking, potentially could be pushed to the north. I think as far as when it comes time to lay out the tracks, it would free up additional land. I like the idea that if we have a nonprofit group, that we'd have a maintenance agreement between the park district and the nonprofit group so that we know it would be maintained. And if for some reason in the future it does not be maintained, at least it's not a permanent structure that's going to be difficult to remove if for some reason we need to readdress the area. So I support the RC track. I think it meets a lot of needs that we would be able to address. The go-kart track, as we mentioned, has been tabled, but that wouldn't be a whole different discussion, I think. But I agree with Attorney Ruff, though. We've been talking about Nicolas Park for my 20-plus years I've been in the Park District, and we have not gone anywhere as far as we can't get rid of the property because of the covenants associated with it. We've had public hearings. We know we had that issue that last year we're having to get vehicles removed and citizens were sharing their concerns. Basically, it's not in my backyard, as they like to have no neighbors behind them but want to park on our property all the time, but yet we have no value as far as in a park or an improvement. If we are looking at Frisbee golf, that is something that we'd have to take into consideration and purchase, but it's been a park that has not been developed for 20-plus years. Or I should say land. It's not necessarily a park, but park property.
Thanks.
Cole, I'm going to ask this. How much further construction are we doing at DCP? I'm getting a little concerned that we're getting so much stuff down there for population, and usage. I mean, do we have a limit to where we're going to go with this?
At this time, I wouldn't say there's a limit. I think it's always been driven by the user groups, and we know stock cars being confined to their fenced area. Rodeo really didn't, expand their footprint because they took over the horse and saddle arena, and we removed some trees, so that footprint's kind of stayed the same. The issue is going to be is where soccer goes in the future. If they're trying to expand to the west or to the north, or the stock car events continue to get bigger and bigger with their larger trucks, it seems like their parking continues to overflow into the community gardens area, and we have 2 groups that weren't working well together. So that's why we chose to move the community gardens, which I think was a good decision. As far as an answer, as far as having too many activities down there, yeah, we do today. That is the simplest version, is we have a lot of activities which I think is good for our community. I don't have a plan B for this type of track at this time. I think it goes back to when we were talking about a Mandan Tennis Center, is trying to find all the different solutions, and DCP came up, and we talked about the soccer fields on the east side and moving soccer up to Star Inn Sports Complex to alleviate some of those issues, because there are some food games going there. And I think holistically, from a community standpoint, where is the right spot for some of our facilities? Well, I mean, if we're going to go down the road about the facility, is where's the noise and where's the issues and where some of our site issues that we have is related to the Stock Car Association. And so if we had to free up space, is that something to consider and look into? We understand racing brings a lot of people into our community, brings a lot of business support, but also brings the noise and the activities that are associated that potentially should be out in the county. A whole nother level if we want to go down that road.
Well, Director Hagelin, I don't know if you should have said that, but but I know what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's the right thing to say. I think it makes more sense, if they're looking at go-karts down there, it makes more sense to have our racing down in one area. We don't, like I said, I don't think we need two parks. If we can reuse it for something else, whether it be a beginner frisbee golf, or I guess maybe as commissioners, we can start to think about how else we can use that property. If there was nothing else tied to it, I mean, it wasn't tied to be an RC racing track, I guess we can put something else there. I think I'm good with that. But so you need from us, you need our land, right?
Yes.
And you need permission from the Stock Car Association, correct? Won't that all for that?
I think, so President Meskey, originally they were going to work together when they came
Right.
to the advisory board. We asked that the go-kart track and the RC track combine their resources and work together, and now the Stock Car Association, as of sometime this afternoon, chose not to attend and change in directions.
Since it's not within the confines
Be
of
outside. So I think
DCP.
for a motion for the board that I would recommend would be that approve the RC track contingent on the nonprofit application being completed, and that they have a maintenance agreement drafted between the park district and whatever this nonprofit group would be. Once those two things are completed, then they could proceed. But we'd have to get those two things completed prior to construction. My concern would be, though, you saw the dollar amounts associated with the RC track, dollar amounts. What happens if those donations or grants don't come develop? Does that stop or impede the project?
We don't have anything else planned for there right now, correct? I think having it up and going by July 2023 is lofty, but I don't know, maybe not. That's, stranger things have happened, but it won't get done unless you start it either. So. I can live with what you said, Cole, I guess, just based upon.
So President
those
Meskey,
two
Commissioners, just to
contingencies.
recap,
Yeah.
would be to approve the RC track contingent on their nonprofit application approval and a maintenance agreement between the Park District and whatever the name of that nonprofit. Once those items would be approved, we obviously bring them back in February or March board meetings, and then they could continue construction.
And we might, like you said, we might want to look at how that sets. I know you have parking on two sides, like you say. If we can move that over a little, might take up a little less land, maybe to work with us on that too. So, any other thoughts, questions? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve RC track at Dakota Community Park contingent on the creation of a nonprofit group to work with and the agreement of a maintenance agreement with the Park District.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Motion by Commissioner Melhoff, second by Commissioner Mutter. Any further discussion? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, and Andrew, I think we'd probably ask that you get that group back together and just, I mean, I think you got a nice plan and in phases. Those phases go pretty fast, so I know you're gonna, in order to meet that goal, you're gonna need approval from us sooner than later, though. So a nonprofit, how difficult is that to get, Arlen? How long does that? Okay. Okay. So,
I don't think it would be denied, so once
Right.
it's pending, we could proceed, and once it's approved, it relates back to the day of application, so.
okay. Okay. All right. With that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Cole, do we want to put them on a later agenda? I guess if you just keep in contact with Cole and see where we're at in the process, and the next time come back to us with that, that'd be great. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item number 3, consider for approval MOU with the Mandan Parks and Recreation Foundation.
President Meshke and Commissioners, today in your board packet, you will find an MOU. The MOU represents a understanding, a relationship between the Mandan Parks and Recreation Foundation and the Mandan Park District. Just some main key points throughout the MOU. Again, it outlines the relationship for Mandan Park District. Some of the responsibilities to the foundation would be to provide a liaison, which would be myself, for the foundation to represent in the Park District capacity. Also support staff, which would be Terry and Cole and anyone else that we find necessary. And then, of course, the office use and equipment use. And that also consists of the website and server and things. The foundation responsibility would be to communicate to the director and staff of any capital campaigns, any money going back and forth. It also outlines the relationship for reimbursement between the foundation and the park district, and it also provides any gifts and things that goes back and forth for the foundation. Earlier today, the foundation board approved the MOU, and today I'll ask for your approval.
Okay, in your packet, it had that MOU. As discussed at the meeting, there were no changes made to that, so we can adopt it as such. Unless you have some concerns.
I would recommend approving the memorandum of understanding that outlines the relationship between Mandan Park District and the Mandan Parks and Recreation Foundation.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Scott, second by Commissioner Melhoff. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Kelly, just one quick question for you, and maybe Arlen and Cole, would it be so bad to get a small financial statement for our park board to see the foundation where they're at?
Yeah, we can provide that each month if that's something that the board would
Just
like.
to see where the donations are coming in, how they're being applied or attached to, tagged to. I think it just kind of gives us an idea. Okay, we got people putting money in for baseball, okay? It gives us an idea where it's at. Even though it's separate funding and separate entities, I think just even if it's a half-page, Terry or Kelly, just to provide into our packets would be, I think, helpful for those that aren't on the foundation yet, so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
One other note is if we as commission members can pass the word around about the Amazon
Smile.
QR code, people are spending money on Amazon, they might as well be getting free money for the foundation as well.
All right. Anything else for Kelly? Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Item number 4, 2022 capital improvement budget transfer to 2023 budget. Terry.
President Meshke, Commissioners, I would like to request your approval this evening to make a budget transfer from 2022 to 2023 for equipment that we did not receive this year that was ordered and for projects that were not completed this year. So we had some mowers for the Golf and Park Operations Department that will be received sometime in 2023. We also had budgeted to purchase some FF&E for the park maintenance shop, the new project that is not happening until 2023, so obviously we did not purchase any of that. And then we had budgeted for a softball well, but instead planned to use that money for a soccer well. And then finally, the community gardens relocation project has been started but will not be completed until the spring. So all of these items were budgeted out of the capital improvement fund at a total of $201,347. So I'm just asking your approval tonight to have that, a motion to transfer that dollar amount from the 22 budget into 2023.
I would make the motion to approve the budget transfer of $201,347 from the 2022 to the 2023 budget in the capital improvement funds.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Scott,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Freilich. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 5, consider for approval accepting transportation alternatives funds for the following trails. 2024 Mandan, North Dakota Highway 6 Shared Use Trail in the amount of $416,384, and the 2025 Old Red Trail Phase 1 Shared Use Trail in the amount of $365,452.
So President Michigan Commissioners, back in June of '22, we had approved to apply for these grants, and in the agenda doc, it was stated that it would be special assessed, but in the minutes, it did not have a motion that required us to special assess the local 20% plus engineering fees. And that's very typical that we've done when it's led by the Mandan Park District. I know the most recent 19th Street Trail was a City of Mandan trail, which was a special improvement district for the benefiting areas. This would not be part of that improvement district. It's completely separate. We would special assess 100% of our costs back to the Mandan Park District. So today is just a formality that we need to make sure that the board has a motion in the minutes to say that we do approve special assessing the local 20% plus engineering. And please understand, these are estimates, so the bids could come in lower or potentially come in higher associated with it. If the bids come in higher, we would present it back to the board and be able to say, you know, here's our recommendations to move forward or not. Again, 2024 and 2025 for these grants.
Board's wishes.
I'll make the motion to approve, to accept both grants as presented and to special assess the local share and engineer fees back to the Park District.
Motion by Commissioner Freilich,
Second?
second by Commissioner Scott. Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Mutter,
Aye.
Commissioner Freilich,
Yeah,
Commissioner Melhoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Yes from me as well. Motion carries. On to item number 6, Commissioner Staff Reports. Anybody have anything to add down there?
Commissioners, I was just going to report, back in November, you had authorized us to invest some of the Park District funds in short-term certificate of deposits. And after getting some rates from the banks in Mandan, we did end up investing $2 million at Starion Bank. $1 million was at 4.3% for 1 year, another $1 million at 4.2% for 6 months, and then we have also done an additional $500,000 with Bravera Bank for 6 months at 4.2. So I just wanted to give you that update.
Thanks, Terry. Kelly, anything?
I'd just like to remind everyone that the matching grant is due at the end of the month, and all that information, how to apply and everything, is on our website at mandanparks.com.
Okay, Dustin? Nope. Commissioner Mutter?
I want to thank Dustin for all the snow removal this year. But actually, I want to do a special thank to his staff. As a photographer, I get to walk around and do all this great stuff. I was down at the ice rink and I saw a father-son smiling while they're ice skating. and none of us did it, but Dustin and his crew put the ice rink there. So I think that we should remember that we make kids smile and the parents smile. So thank you, Dustin, for that. Oh, and Dale Barth retired, and we want to make sure we thank him for all his service too.
Okay, thank you.
I've
Commissioner
got-
Freilich,
I've got nothing.
Commissioner Mel,
No report.
Commissioner Scott.
No report.
All right, moving on to item number 7, authorize payment of the monthly bills. Whew. Can we do that?
I'll move to authorize payment of the monthly bills.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Melhoff,
Second?
second by Commissioner Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Future meetings for Mandan Park Board Commissioners, this Thursday, January 12th, 2023, a joint powers agreement meeting at 12 PM, Raging Rivers Administrative Offices, and then our next regularly scheduled Park Board meeting right here on February 13th, 2023, 5:30 at City Hall. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Mutter,
Second.
second by Commissioner Freilich. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.